Each year, cartels bring in billions of dollars to Mexico. Roughly 71% of the entire drug supply of the United States is controlled by Mexican cartels, leading to the drug war in 2006. Since then, Mexico has faced over 360,000 deaths and more than 79,000 disappearances, all linked to the cartels. What started as an opium trade has become much larger and more sinister. It has cost the lives of both drug lords and innocent people. You could be a journalist reporting against the cartel, a politician, or even just a child caught in the crossfire. No one is safe in the cartel's business. Today, cartels contribute about 35 to 45 billion US dollars to the Mexican economy, with an estimated 80% profit margin. To put things into perspective, tourism contributes only 35 billion US dollars. The Sinaloa cartel, one of the oldest players in Mexico's organized crimes, is estimated to have an annual income of 3 billion US dollars. However, it may be significantly higher. The porous borderline is the reason for such a massive smuggling business from Mexico to America. The origins of cartels date all the way back to the 1880s, when Chinese immigrants settled in Mexico and established an legal opium trade. With the passage of time and various laws, the trade soon evolved into alcohol and later narcotics. Even though the USA and Mexican governments tried to crack down on the trade, all of the measures taken by the government ironically only resulted in the increase of illicit trade. For example, the Prohibition Law of 1919 was meant to decrease alcohol consumption. However, it only led to the start of the alcohol trade, a new product from the smugglers to earn revenue. In 1933, America ended the Prohibition Act, which was expected to end the trade, but the alcohol bootleggers shifted from alcohol to far worse and more addictive illicit drugs. During the 1940s to 50s, Mexico experienced the first rise in organized crime. The most prominent and perhaps the founder of old-time cartels was a man titled the King of the Opium Trade, Alberto Falcón. Alberto extended his trade from drugs to armed weapon trafficking and money laundering. He accumulated enough assets to bribe officials of not only Mexico, but also the US. Consequently, cartels started gaining political help to establish their trade. Falcón was known for his lavish lifestyle, and it can be said he was the first drug lord to ever live such a high-profile life. Until now, the cartels were not involved in human trafficking, but in 1964, after the labor laws of the US banned the legal labor of Mexican farmers on US soil, desperate workers started illegal border crossings. Soon enough, the cartels got involved. It was during Falcón's time that journalists started suspecting the CIA's involvement in the drug trade. Many cite evidence that Falcón was allowed to smuggle drugs in exchange for information about Cuba. Before becoming the biggest drug lord of all time, he was trained by the CIA and took part in a coup d'etat against Pinochet in 1973 in Chile. So there's a possibility of a connection between them. Furthermore, after his arrest in 1975, Falcón consistently claimed that he trafficked drugs for the CIA and had a cooperative collaboration with them. However, there's still no proof to support this. Nonetheless, he did pave the way for the modern-day cartels, as he mentored the Aureliano Felix brothers, who would become the leaders of the Tijuana cartel. After Falcón's arrest, his rival Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo and a few other members started grouping up the smaller cartels and created what we now refer to as the first ever major Mexican cartel, called the Guadalajara Cartel. Gallardo took drug trafficking to a whole new level. He developed a connection with the Colombian drug lords such as the infamous Pablo Escobar by utilizing the already established system. They took advantage of the increased cocaine demand and started smuggling drugs into Mexico. However, in 1985, US DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena was kidnapped and murdered. This case gained international attention and pressured the Mexican and American governments to take strict action against the narcotics trade. This led to the arrest of several wanted leaders, including Gallardo in 1989. Despite being in jail, he continued to run the business using a cell phone and dividing Mexico into plazas or territories. Later, he was kept in solitary confinement where his communication with the outside had now been very limited. This was when the Guadalajara cartel started to divide into several smaller cartels, but the two most prominent to emerge were the Sinaloa cartel and the Tijuana cartel. This is where we saw the beginning of what we now know as the most powerful modern-day cartels, including the Sinaloa cartel, the CJNG, the Gulf cartel, the BLO, the Los Zesta cartel, and the Juarez cartel. Throughout the years, they've become more and more powerful, more territorial, and more violent, and more controlling. The reason was simple. They had the support of the government. The murder of Camarena highlighted the deep-rooted corruption of the Mexican government. Just after the arrest of Rafael Caro Quintero, one of the co-founders of the Guadalajara cartel, hundreds of officials started resigning in fear that their corruption might be exposed. Many were convicted and arrested for their association with the narcotics trade, and quite a few of them included high-ranking officials. For the first time, a very clear link between the cartels and the government came to light. What were previously dubbed as speculation and rumors now had some semblance of authenticity to them. It was becoming clear just how extended the cartel's networks were. A significant reason for such extensive corruption was Mexico's unique political situation. Since 1929, for 71 years, only one political party won every single election: the Institutional Revolutionary Party. As expected, corruption was inevitable. The government established a two-way deal with the cartels where they provided protection, market access, and selling rights to cartels, and in turn, cartels would either pay vast sums of money or ensure that they won the election. Political scientists Guillermo Trejo and Sandra Lea found that there are 61% more chances of attacks in cities where electoral cycles occur. They have also noted an increase in cartel violence during the electoral season and linked their finding to cartels attempting to influence the election outcome. Cartels intend to cooperate and place favorable politicians in the governments. As a result, they consistently maintain a cordial relationship with the government. All of the violence and exposure to corruption caused an uproar among the Mexican populace, and a collective desire for change rose. For the first time in 7 decades, the people voted for a different party, and Vicente Fox of the Conservative National Action Party took the president's seat. Fox immediately started cracking down on the cartels through the military and eradicating all government links with the cartels. He replaced hundreds of corrupt officials with individuals of his own party. It can be said his approach was mildly successful because more than 79,000 criminals were arrested, which included cartel members and even drug lords. There was also a decrease in the homicides between 2006 and 2007. The number has decreased from 9.7 deaths per 10,000 people to 8.1 deaths per 10,000 people, but this victory was short-lived as there was a spike in 2008 which only seemed to grow until 2012. The leading cause for increased homicides was the cartel's response to the new government. They used to rely on the government's intentional ignorance to run their illicit drug business, and so now it was changing. So they resorted to increasing violence to intimidate the government. Cartels started creating military-styled soldiers to combat the troops sent by the government. Dr. Gaspar Aguena, the director of the University of Texas at El Paso's North American Studies program, noted, "The cartels, the reason why they're so powerful is because they've gotten an army of unemployed young men." More than half the population of Mexico lives below the poverty line. Therefore, the young generation is desperate for sources of income. However, due to a lack of education, they have very few opportunities to earn righteously. Cartels target such members of the populace and influence them to join the cartel or partake in illegal border crossings. In any case, they are exploited for money. Although it seemed like there was a choice, in reality, there was none. You either submitted or you were killed. In 2006, the National Action Party won again. This time, the President Felipe Calderón took even more drastic measures. He deployed 45,000 military troops and another 12,000 police officers. This was also the start of the drug war, a collaborative effort between Mexican and American governments to tackle the drug trade. Nonetheless, the violence was still at an all-time high, and it wasn't until 2012 that the Institutional Revolutionary Party came back to power, with Enrique Peña Nieto as the president, that there was a decrease in the trend. He decided to take a milder approach and shift the drug trade from a national security threat to a law and order concern. However, this has still not been implemented. But all of this does not mean that the cartel grew weaker or lost control. In fact, it became even more violent. As the drug lords were arrested, the cartels kept breaking into smaller groups and even fought to gain control of favorable routes. Therefore, there was an increase in internal cartel wars, which also had adverse consequences for innocent civilians. For instance, in 2015, 22 people were killed in an armed confrontation between the Mexican military and cartels, most of whom were civilians. Between 2006 and 2010, 994 children were killed as a consequence of the drug war. In a classified report, a CIA analyst revealed that by 2018, about 20% of Mexican regions were controlled by cartels. A great example of how they maintain tight grip is the cartel's involvement in the fishing industry. They coerce the local fishermen and restaurants to sell and buy only to them. They also forcibly became the middlemen for Chinese illegal fish transport and demanded high extortion fees. This is a great example of demonstrating the cartel's rule over Mexico and just how easy it is for them to take whatever they want. Cartels also use social means to build rapport with the local population. For example, the Sinaloa cartel was seen handing out food packages en masse during the COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, they are often more lenient than other cartels. They fund local festivals, keep the tax officers away, and demand extortion fees only once a month compared to others who require it with a gun to their head every week. In many instances, they've helped businessmen find their relatives and even solved and moderated local crime cases, which is pretty ironic. Therefore, they successfully managed to paint themselves as saints and gain the support from locals because they were the lesser evil. All these social tactics, manipulation, and monopolization have led to a Mexico where violence is just the norm. Blaming the cartels for the drug trade across the borders of Mexico and into the US would not be entirely factual. Former Senator David Perdue estimated that the criminal business migrating from Mexico into the US was worth $500 billion. To put that into perspective, that is more than Walmart, one of the biggest US-based corporations. This report included all sorts of cartels operating in the shadows and not filling out tax audits. With such a gigantic drug market in America, it would be hard to imagine Mexican drug cartels not thriving. Violence, drug trade, and human trafficking run rampant in Mexico. The death grip the cartel holds on the region is a plague that has infected every institution in the country, and any hopes for a cure are bleak. The murder rate has tripled from 2006 to 2022, and warfare has shifted from small arms to heavy weaponry, drones, and bombs. But the people of Mexico remain hopeful. Hopeful for a light at the end of the tunnel, hopeful for a better life, and hopeful to see a Mexico where crime is a relic of the past.